Hey, Ace and Beaky coming at you hot and fresh, way too early in the morning to be sane. And I was thinking to myself, after remembering some conversations I had with people who kind of looked at Narnia beyond just a Lord of the Rings light for Christmas, I began to realize to myself, why is it that so many people like to start Narnia but never finish it? Now, the thing is, Narnia had like a cartoon made in the 70s, and then British Broadcasting Company, BBC, they kind of made it a mini-series, which I thought was appropriate, and to this day, they probably have gotten the farthest with making all of the Narnia books into something to be seen on a screen. Which is, they did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, they did Prince Caspian, they did Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and they did Silver Chair. So 4 out of 7 isn't that great, but it's better than what anybody else has done, because a cartoon was made about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, BBC made The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and 3 others, and Disney made The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and 2 others. So Disney/Walden/Fox, it just kind of feels like it was the hot potato getting passed around. It's like, well, you take care of them. No, you take care of them. It's like, dang. That must be what it feels like a kid in the foster system. That must be what it feels like somebody in the army who has potential but nobody wants to train his ass. I mean, it's like, well, what do you want to do with him? Don't you want to throw him away? No, he could come in handy, but how do we use him? I don't know. You do something with him. No, you do something. I don't know what to do with this guy. So I kind of feel that, why is Narnia either like the foster kid or the redheaded stepchild that gets passed around on the best of days, and on the worst of days, they're like that pet, that holiday pet that the kid can't take care of, so it's basically doomed to die or get abandoned or something. Whether it's a pet dog or cat for Christmas, or a pet chick or bunny for Easter, but you buy it for your kid to make your kid happy. The kid realizes that there's a lot of responsibility. You're going to have to feed it. You're going to have to clean up its poop. It's going to take care of. It's going to get sick. It's going to get bigger and older, and it's not going to be adorable anymore. And I sort of begin to wonder if that's one of those things where Narnia is something that likes it when it's a cute baby, when it's a cute puppy, when it's like one of the ultimate movies you can make for Christmas. But then you can't take care of it. Like, whenever Narnia becomes a teenager, you don't want to see it through to becoming an adult and sending it on its way. Why is that? Why has Narnia had bad luck with this? It deserves better. C.S. Lewis was an inkling with J.R.R. Tolkien, and maybe his stories were a bit more preachy and in-your-face symbolic than J.R.R. Tolkien, which could be, which he wasn't trying to necessarily shove as much down your throat. He left some of it up to your opinion, but he did kind of voice how, he probably had some mixed feelings about things at the time through his work. But why is it that, that Lewis has only had so much success compared to Tolkien, that Lewis is kind of like the Luigi to Tolkien's Mario? Is it that some of it just doesn't click with people, that maybe Tolkien is objectively a better book that's more popular or easily translated into the big screen? Well, yes and no. The latter one, a lot of people thought it was impossible to make a Tolkien movie until Peter Jackson did it. Before Peter Jackson did it, you kind of had the same story of some awkward animation that tried hard and did well for its station, but couldn't really rise to success. There was Rankin Bass and Ralph Bakshi, and they made animated Lord of the Rings that was probably good for its time, but didn't quite achieve what it should have. And then Peter Jackson blew everybody away by being able to translate it into blockbuster movies that avoided a lot of the tropes we were tired of, aka too much CG, and just made a really good movie that, everybody liked, something that people didn't think was possible, not just because it was so much to do and you want to do it justice, but also the format of the books. But I'm not going to get into too much there, because you can get some Lord of the Rings expert to tell you that. But why? You have to ask yourself, why is it that Narnia has had such a hard time getting an equivalent treatment? Some of it might be that people just don't like Narnia as much as Lord of the Rings, but I would say that Narnia could actually, with its 7 light novels, with its 7 light novel format, it could actually translate well into, I know this is going to sound weird, but an anime, since a lot of anime are based off of light novels, and a lot of anime only go 12 to 25 episodes, which is probably what the entire Narnia series would need, especially if you basically did like the anime version of what BBC did, using their model to where every book is basically 2.5 hours worth of content spread out over several episodes, so that this 5 episodes is one book, and this 5 episodes is one book, and this 5 episodes is one book. So by the time you get around to 30 odd episodes, you'll have had each book be a separate story arc in one series. But what is it that's really stopping Narnia from... I doubt it would ever achieve the height that Lord of the Rings did. And, Disney did an alright job, sorta, debatedly, and BBC, I think, did a consistently better job to the nature of Narnia, but it didn't necessarily have the funding, so some of those puppets and stuff came off as a little corny. So, what is it that's kind of stopped it? Well, one thing that's sort of backfires on Narnia, one thing is that its strength is its weakness. I'm going to talk about how Narnia grows up with its audience, and that sort of what would normally help a TV series, especially in this day and age where you've got all these R-rated superhero movies about comic book characters that 90% of the time were in the PG to PG-13 territory, that were basically, in essence, primarily aimed at children. Good enough for adults to like it, otherwise it wouldn't have gotten as popular as it is, but primarily, not solely, primarily for children. Why is it that, so shouldn't Narnia have a better job because it grows up with its audience? But that's the thing. It did it in such a way that it didn't translate to the media well. You would think, and I would think, that the fact that Narnia, trying to grow up with its audience in a philosophical and spiritual way, one that is emotionally mature and intelligent and thoughtful and profound, but simple, you would think that that would be exactly what people would want. There's a lot of things that are classics that a lot of adults like, and even though they're kid-friendly, they're basically rated G or PG, adults love it because it has something that some R-rated movies don't have, and that's emotional intelligence, that's emotional maturity. Case in point, Batman the Animated Series, and a lot of Studio Ghibli movies, which I'm going to say later on are actually some of the things I think if they do make an animated project for starting and finishing Narnia, that should be kind of the animation and tone styles. But I digress. Narnia admits that it grows up with its audience. It's not the same story each book. It's almost like the book that came out that you remember as a classic when you were 8 years old. Another book comes out and it's maybe actually sort of has a tone of something that you would appreciate when you were 12. Or maybe it talked about something in your phase of life that you really wish that you kind of looked at when you were in college, or whenever you were a single man in his 30s that had already started a family. And then whenever you get older and your kids grow up. Narnia grows up with its audience, or at least it tries to from its own point of view. This is subjective to taste. But it even says so. In Prince Caspian, Lucy, trying to go out into the woods and find the lion Jesus, basically, finds him after everybody else can't, and after he's been hidden for a long time. But whenever she finds him, she says, "You're bigger than I remember you." And as something that's meant to be philosophical and theological, because C.S. Lewis was a devout Catholic, but he was also like to mix some Platonic line of thought in his take on Christianity. Just like he liked to express his overall Christian point of view, but using, Greek, Celtic, and Druidic paganism. He talked whenever he basically had the line Jesus in there, Aslan said, "As you get older, so do I. As you grow, so do I." I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the moral of the story is that I grow up with you. I'm not something that you did as a kid, and that was a nice little phase, like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, but that you were meant to outgrow it. No, maybe you were meant to outgrow your oversimplified understanding of faith, spirituality, religion, theology, philosophy, or just being emotionally intelligent and just being emotionally mature. You outgrow that phase, but you don't outgrow the idea. The idea grows with you, and it helps you grow, and it grows as you grow, and it changes as you change. Just like you have the same person. This is the man, Bob. This is the woman, Jane. But even though they're technically the same person, they go through changes. People change. And what should be a strength of the Chronicles of Narnia, as far as the audience appreciating it, albeit in this day and age where religion isn't very popular, that niche might be ever decreasing unless you can make it palpable for non-religious audiences, which you could. You'd have to do a little bit of subtle tweaking, but you could without damaging it too much, without taking away from it what the religious audience would want. But for marketing, you would find out that it actually hurts it, because a lot of people want to grab the Chronicles of Narnia, and they want to make Lord of the Rings for Christmas that's more kid-friendly. They want to make, basically, the Disney-fied Lord of the Rings. Now, a gentleman who recently, I know very little about him. This is the first time I saw his channel, but a gentleman made a good podcast, basically, not a podcast, but an episode about why do R-rated superhero movies exist. And he talked about the value and the pros and cons of taking superheroes that were historically 9 out of 10 times in the G to mild PG-13 category, and then try to take something that you grew up with as a kid and make it R-rated for you whenever you're fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, or in your 30s. There's nothing wrong with this, but it has a negative consequence that makes some people regret it, because it's kind of like one of those things that once it loses its innocence, it can never get it back, and some of its charm and greatest strength was its innocence as far as escapism and, appealing to the younger generation and making it family friendly. Again, there's nothing wrong with this, and he's not even censoring it, but he's saying that there's been some things that we lost that we may never really be able to get back, and that it would be best that if there's going to be, R-rated comic book hero movies, it should probably be reserved for superheroes that always were historically in that direction. To where, if you want to make comic book movies more mature, keep it within the sweet PG-13 area rating, but make it just more emotionally intelligent and emotionally mature. Make it higher quality. Because if something is kid-friendly, but it's not just for kids and it's of insanely high quality, adults sometimes appreciate it more than the target audience does. And like I said, you would think that this would work in Narnia's favor, especially in this day and age, because the series becomes more philosophically and theologically profound with its underlying themes. It's still fantasy. It's still appropriate for the young audience of children that it's aimed for, but some of the themes that they're talking about would be over a kid's head, and while the kids might be distracted by the fact of, oh look, they're trying to escape from cannibalistic giants with this guy who kind of looks like a cross between Scarecrow and the creature from the Black Lagoon, there is something profound being said that kind of exposes the philosophy and his Platonic take on Christianity of C.S. Lewis, making him one of the intellectual titans of our time. Speaking of giants, of course. But the thing is that why does it never get finished? Well, like I said, one of the reasons is because everybody wants that Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. They start with the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you know anything about Narnia, that's the second book in the series. But it makes for a good Christmas special and an epic movie. So the thing is that it can appeal to the crowd who are religious, whose parents probably wouldn't dream of letting them watch Harry Potter, and it appeals to the crowd of people who just like fantasy in general, whether that's Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, they don't care. And so the thing is that everybody wants that cute, baby, puppy, chick for Christmas, but they don't know what to do with it once it starts becoming a hassle to take care of. Because Narnia, like a child, grows up, it becomes a teenager, it starts to question things, it starts to think about deeper and more adult thoughts, even though it's still primarily for children, and the context is definitely kid-friendly. At least no less than Lord of the Rings was. But the thing is that that's kind of why I feel it never gets finished, because whenever they want to make it, they want to make as much money as possible, and they want to start off on the best foot. And the best foot is a Christmas special that everybody can watch and that is blown away by. Whether it's people who want to get some Jesus in their kids before Christmas, but with under the guise of entertainment, or whether it's for people who just appreciate fantasy in general, and it's kind of cool that it's actually a good Christmas movie. What I think is the problem is that because they want to milk that for what it's worth, they don't want to treat it like the mature child it is. Like, this is a kid, you can't let him watch anything worse than PG-13, but don't insult his intelligence. They realize that it's a kid, but they think that a kid automatically means shallow and shameful and stupid, when kids, are so much more intelligent than we give them credit for. Of course they need guidance, of course they need guardianship, and to learn respect for their guardians, and to understand that they need to be raised up, but don't patronize them. I mean, God. If your kids are dumb, maybe that says something about you as a parent. Maybe you don't have faith in your work. Well, maybe a lot of people who make entertainment don't have faith in their audiences. But then again, it's business. It ain't family. Isn't that the way of things? So, they don't want to talk about the beginning. They don't want to start out with the magician's nephew. And they don't want to build up much farther after Silver Chair. They don't want to have the last battle. And it's sad because they seem to skip past the horse and his boy. Now, we're going to talk about that there is some controversy with C.S. Lewis. And if you know anything about the controversy of H.P. Lovecraft, you probably know what's coming.